Question 7. So, explain the purpose of learning strategies and describe why we need to explicitly teach learning strategies to students with disabilities. Teaching learning strategies is so vital to students with learning disabilities because these are the skills that we assume that the students already know and understand. However, they're most of the time not taught. But they need to know these skills because they encompass everything. Teaching these learning strategies help our students learn. So students that struggle with processing information can utilize graphic organizers to better understand the information. So graphic organizers helps organize the information and then helps students see the relationships between the ideas and are easily understood and remembered, and they know how to apply the information. So these can be done with concept maps or webs or just different tools the students can utilize. So comprehension strategies. So this also deals with processing information. So are we activating the students' prior knowledge, reflecting on the topics, writing down the topics, using predictions? Are we generating questions? What is the main idea? What do we need to do here? Monitoring their comprehension. Are we rereading passages? Are we using those context clues? Identifying the main idea. Can the student understand the main idea of this paragraph? Are they determining and picking out those key details that are so vital? Can they paraphrase what's happening? So can they read a paragraph? Ask yourself what's the main idea and the two details, and then put the main idea into their own words. And then summarizing, which happens after reading or comprehending something. Can they summarize what they just learned? So that's important when learning comprehension strategies. So mnemonic devices are helpful for recalling information. So there are 3 types of mnemonic devices that we can teach students. So keyword methods, so students relate a sentence or image or interactive picture to remember new information. The PEG method, so students can use a common rhyming words for numbers and link these words to the new information that's being learned. And then the final one is the first letter strategy. So this is a really common one. Students use the first letter of the word to list items and create steps or acronyms. And these are especially beneficial when students are recalling information. So these are like the please, excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Note-taking. So providing students with guided notes. So having those students fill in the blanks of the really important details. Strategic note-taking. This is aimed towards teaching skills that are aimed at good note-taking. So that are provided by prompts and teacher cues to help organize the main ideas. The aware strategy. So having the student fill out information of arranging the taking notes, write down quickly, applying cues, reviewing the notes, and edit the notes. So this is, what they need to be aware of. So the arrangement, the cues, all those things. Then another note-taking strategy is also the column format, so the columnar format. So the students make columns to organize their notes. And these are just different ways that the students can learn the information and the teachers can provide and teach to organize that information. So the next thing that students struggle with is that organization and managing time piece. Now, material organization is extremely important. So teaching the students how to organize their material. How are they going to keep track of their material? Then the time management piece is teaching the students to estimate how long is it going to take you to complete this task. Scheduling the time. When are you going to do this? And then monitoring how your schedule is going. Then there's the self-regulation and the behavior stuff, so being self-aware. So the self-monitoring, the self-instruction, goal setting, self-reinforcement. So these are the things that are going to have the student be aware of what they're doing. Question 8. So describe the purpose of a content enhancement routine. Explain how a content enhancement routine is delivered, and explain why having the students fill out the graphic device independently is not effective. So the content enhancement routine is a routine based for content material, not basic skills. They need to be given late elementary, middle school, high school age. Those more in-depth concepts like history, science, literature, and they're most effectively taught when they're in a connected classroom where the teacher and the students are working together and learning together successfully. For this to be successful, the teacher needs to construct a draft of the graphic device. So the purpose of the CERs are so the students understand the material more in depth. So they are learning it in a different way. So the cue is the opening of a lesson. The students are told that they're going to come up with the graphic device together, and then they're going to start it. And then, so the do is the finding the linking steps on how they're going to construct the graphic device. What do we need to know? And then finally is the review, which is the check for understanding. So this teacher is figuring out if they understand the concept. So having the students do the graphic device does not support a learning community, and you're not learning together. So if it's individually, you're not doing it together. That's not a content enhancement routine. That's not how you implement it. It's not effective because the whole purpose is to construct the device together. It's not an individual activity. You're supposed to learn as a class. So that's why it's not effective. The students are not getting the information that they need to from it, and they're not learning from each other. Number 9. So explain self-regulation and describe how teachers can support learning of self-regulation. So self-regulation is a student being able to control their own behaviors and identifying what they need to change. Teachers can support self-regulation by teaching their students the skills that go along with it, such as self-monitoring, self-instruction, self-assessment, and self-reinforcement. So self-monitoring. So is teaching the students 2 tasks. One is realizing the absence or presence of a behavior, and then 2 is recording the occurrence of the behavior. This teaches the student to be aware of how he or she is acting in the classroom. So first, there's a couple steps to this. Now first, they have to identify the behavior concern and define the behavior. This behavior needs to be observable. You need to be able to see it. The student needs to be able to recognize that it's a problem. Then there needs to be a developed plan to cue their own behavior. So how will the student know when to record. Will there be a bell? Will you raise your hand? What will it be? How will the student know when they need to mark down on their tally sheet? Meet with the student to explain the management plan. During this time, the student needs to be given examples and non-examples of the expected behavior. What are we looking for? So developing a self-monitoring data collection sheet. Now this data collection sheet should be easy and portable that the student can take to their other classes, that they can utilize this in their other classes. The fifth step is to teach how to use the self-management plan by first modeling it for the student, for the act of self-recording, and then for first verbalizing the steps out loud. This step is crucial because it's the step where you're actually teaching the student how to self-monitor. Then you have to assess for accuracy. So is the student being honest with themselves? Are they seeing what you're seeing? And then there needs to be faded of the plan. Does the student need this anymore? And as a teacher, you should be able to see kind of with the data that's being collected, is the student correcting their behavior right away as soon as they realize that they're marking something down on their tally sheet. So that's when you should fade it. So then teaching self-instruction is also another vital step to help students learn self-regulation. So this is where the student identifies the problem. So what should I be doing right now? Attending to the situation. All right, I have to concentrate on my work. I have to do this. And then a plan during the phase. So this is there's 3 steps to this. So this holds as a reminder. Then another part of self-regulation, how we can support it, is by teaching the students self-assessment. So the students assessing their own behavior and collaborating with other elements such as self-monitoring. So conducting a performance assessment. There needs to be a determining level of performance. Then they need to set an attainable goal upon agreement between the teacher and the student. Then there needs to be a scheduled evaluation. All right, by this time I will have 80% accuracy. I will only be off task 10% of the time instead of 20% of the time. Then they need to compare their goal with their current performance, which is the 4th step. So them having them assess themselves is also important, and another way that we can help support our students' self-regulation skills. Then the last one is the self-reinforcers. Now this can be done internally or externally. So there needs to be determining what is the reinforcer, what's going to motivate the student. And then there needs to be a schedule for reinforcement. How often is the student getting this reinforcement? All right, every single time, every 2 times, every 5 times they perform this task. What? Then there needs to be rules. What will a student have to choose from? Are they going to have a menu? Or are they going to have 2 options? So these are the things that we're going to support our students with their self-regulation skills. Number 10. Explain executive functioning and describe how a teacher can support learning executive functioning skills. So executive functioning skills are the skills that you have to complete a task. For students with executive functioning deficits, they might struggle with processing information, recalling information, organizing their materials, and might struggle with learning and study strategies. So when teaching this, we need to provide explicit instruction. This is how we support it. We teach those specific steps of the strategy and also describe how, when, where, why we use these strategies. That will provide them some context. Why do we do this? How do we do this? Where do we do this? So modeling. So we actually demonstrate how to utilize the strategies and executive functioning skills. All right, when I get home, I'm going to do this. You know, providing those examples are just as important in executive functioning lesson as in, say, an English lesson. Providing guided practice. So provide ample opportunities for the students to practice the strategy. Make sure they're offered guidance and corrective feedback. Are they using, have them organize their stuff, complete their stuff, utilizing those steps. Provide the student with independent practice. Allow the students to use the strategies independently and monitor their performance. Are they organizing their folder correctly? Are they using their planner correctly? Are they managing their time correctly? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? So providing those independent practices too are just as important. The self-regulation strategies are also important. So encourage the student to self-direct their learning by teaching themselves to use these strategies and self-monitor them and use goal setting. So have students set goals. This is executive functioning. This is how they're going to manage their time. And then the maintenance and generalization. Incorporate these strategies into the students every day. Executive functioning is in every single class. So we have to support this. We have to, teach students these skills because this is what's going to help them in all their classes. Question 11. Explain each of the 6 co-teaching models and describe what the teacher needs to think about when planning to use each of the co-teaching models. So the first model is the one teach, one observe. So this is the model where one teacher assumes responsibility of instructions and then one teacher actively observes the target learning of the students. So in this model, when planning for this, you need to think about what's the assessment being given. What do we want the students to know? What do we want to be able to observe? The second one is one teach, one assist. So this is where one teacher teaches the lesson and then one teacher assists the students and provides support as needed. For this model, when planning for it, the teachers need to determine the instruction being given and how assistance will be provided throughout the lesson. Is the supporting teacher going to go around and check for understanding? Is there only going to be a couple students that we're assisting? When will we assist? That needs to be determined when planning for this lesson. Station teaching is another co-teaching model. So station teaching involves students rotating through 3 or more instructional groups where the teacher assumes a particular instruction and then the third group or other groups are independent. So a teacher is teaching one skill at each station. When planning, the teachers need to determine what the stations are. They need to think about how the instruction will be provided. What are they getting in each station? How are the stations connected? Then there's parallel teaching. So this parallel teaching requires teachers jointly planned instruction, and the teachers are giving the instruction at the same time to 2 different groups of students. So when planning for this, the teachers need to figure out the concepts that they're teaching. They're going to figure out what are they teaching, what are they assessing, Then another one is alternative teaching, co-teaching model. So This model is when there's a small group and large group configurations, each led by one teacher. This teaching method can be used with students that might be struggling with the concept being taught. Alternative teaching allows for students to be providing the instruction, just maybe at a different pace. So there's one large group instruction, and then there's a smaller group that might be broken off. So that's when planning for this, we have to identify the students that might be in that smaller group, or who are going to be in the large group. What are we going to have to do? Team teaching is when teachers continuously alternate roles of primary instruction within an individual lesson. So when planning for this, we have to decide, who is going to teach what. What is the assessment going to be? That's important for that and what we need to think about. So a lot of co-teaching models, we have to think about what's being given, what's being assessed, and how are we going to do that as a